I've noticed something really interesting after years of watching how people behave with money. A lot of people don't actually lack money the way they think they do, but they live with this constant feeling that they're about to be short. They save. They're not drowning in debt. They pay their bills on time, and yet, there's always this quiet voice in their head saying, "I'm probably not okay yet." It still feels risky. If one small thing goes wrong, everything could fall apart. What's interesting is this. That feeling doesn't come from the number in your bank account. It comes from how your brain understands safety. And if you're watching this and you see yourself in that description, I want to say this clearly right from the start. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just in a psychological stage that a lot of people don't even realize they've entered. Today, I'm not talking about getting rich fast. I'm not talking about life-changing investments. I want to talk about something much more fundamental. The moment when you're already ahead of most people, but you haven't caught up to that fact yet. Idea 1. Your brain updates slower than your money. I've noticed that most people have a huge psychological delay when it comes to money. Their situation has changed, but the way they feel about risk hasn't. Back when they were living paycheck to paycheck, their brain learned a very strong reflex. Stay alert. Be careful. Always be ready for the worst-case scenario. The problem is, your brain doesn't automatically update when things get better. It keeps running the old software. So you get people who have an emergency fund, don't carry credit card balances anymore, have fairly stable cash flow, but still feel anxious, like everything could collapse tomorrow. Here's the key thing. That anxiety isn't a sign that you're bad with money. It's a sign that you crossed a line, but your mindset hasn't caught up yet. It's like moving out of a cramped old apartment, but still walking carefully, afraid you'll bump into the walls, even though the new place is much bigger. A lot of people think, "I'm just not good with money yet," when really they just haven't allowed themselves to feel safe. And this part matters a lot. Once you move past financial survival, money stops being a rescue problem and becomes a structure-building problem. If you don't recognize that shift, you'll keep living like you're in a crisis, even though the crisis is already behind you. Idea 2. When you stop putting out fires, but still think you're losing. I've noticed there's a very quiet moment in everyone's financial life. It's the moment when you no longer have to scramble for every small issue. You're not constantly thinking, "What if I'm late on the electric bill this week?" You're not hoping, "Please let nothing go wrong this month." But here's the strange part. A lot of people pass that moment without noticing it. They still judge themselves using old standards. Back when things were unstable, winning meant getting through the month, avoiding late fees, not borrowing more money. But once things stabilize, the rules change. Winning is no longer fixing problems. Winning is not having problems to fix. Most people miss that. They look around and see someone else buying a new car, someone else traveling, someone else spending freely, and they quickly conclude, "I'm still not doing well." When in reality, they've shifted from reacting to operating. Have you noticed this? Some people make a lot of money, but their lives are always in emergency mode. Others earn a modest income, but bills get paid when they arrive. Life has a rhythm. They don't have to think about money all day. What's interesting is this. A sense of stability doesn't come from big numbers. It comes from consistency. When your money starts working through habits instead of requiring constant stress and decisions, that's a huge step forward. But because it's quiet, many people don't count it as success. So they pressure themselves. They tell themselves, "I need to do more. I'm still not enough." When what they really need is to realize they're no longer standing on the edge. Idea 3. Feeling behind usually comes from looking at the wrong things. I've noticed that most people aren't wrong about their situation. They're just paying attention to the wrong things. They're very sensitive to small expenses, a slightly expensive meal, an impulse purchase, one unnecessary spend. And then they beat themselves up. "See, I still can't control my money." But here's what's interesting. Those things rarely determine your financial future. What actually shapes your life usually gets overlooked. Monthly fixed costs, long-term commitments, decisions repeated over many years. Most people don't realize this. Money usually isn't destroyed by one bad decision. It's destroyed by a bad structure kept in place for too long. Someone can be very disciplined day to day, but still carry a fixed burden that's too heavy. Housing that's beyond their means. Transportation eating up most of their income. Financial obligations that no longer fit their life. And because those costs don't happen every day, the brain downplays them. Meanwhile, a coffee or a meal gets magnified because it feels like, I just messed up. The interesting thing is this: when you focus too much on small details, you miss the bigger picture. You might feel like you're failing when in reality, cash flow is still coming in. Obligations are being met. There's no immediate pressure crushing you. That feeling of being behind isn't coming from money, it's coming from over-monitoring yourself. And when people live in constant self-monitoring mode, they almost never feel like they have enough, even when they've come very far. Idea 4. Real stability is actually kind of boring. I've noticed something a bit paradoxical. The healthiest financial periods in a person's life usually don't come with strong emotions. No excitement, no drama, no big stories to tell, and because of that, many people don't believe they're on the right path. When money is unstable, every decision feels important. Getting through a hard month feels like a victory. The emotions are very clear, but when things start running smoothly, money goes where it's supposed to go. Bills handle themselves. You don't have to think much every day. Life becomes normal, and our brains don't like that. Most people don't realize this. The brain often confuses quiet with stagnation. They think, why don't I feel progress? Why isn't anything happening? When in reality, nothing happening is a sign that the system is working. Money starts doing its real job, not creating emotion but reducing friction in life. You don't overthink small decisions anymore. You don't hope things don't happen. You start being able to wait. And here's the interesting part. The ability to wait is a very powerful form of financial strength. People who aren't financially safe can't wait. They're forced to react. They're forced to decide quickly. They're forced to accept less than ideal options. When you can wait, it means you have margin. But because margin is quiet, a lot of people underestimate it. Doi jai la bandik sang tieng an, gyong van noi tun hien, dan chong guoi mai, gyu jung ten dan tam li, bin tin, ro rang, hong len lop. Idea 5. Financial health is having a buffer to mess up. I've realized there's a very accurate way to measure financial health, but almost no one uses it. It's not how much money you have. It's how many mistakes you're allowed to make before your life falls apart. Most people don't realize this. Real wealth doesn't start with extra money. It starts with extra tolerance. When you can, pay a surprise bill and feel annoyed, not panicked. Make a less than perfect decision and still get through the month. Have income come in a little late without needing to borrow, you've entered a very different zone. A lot of people think they're not good with money yet, just because they still feel anxious. But here's what's interesting. Anxiety doesn't disappear the moment you build a buffer. It disappears after you experience a few times that you don't collapse. That buffer doesn't need to be big, it just needs to exist. Once you know, deep down, if something happens, I have a plan, your brain starts to relax. And this part really matters. Healthy money doesn't make you reckless. It makes you calm. You no longer feel the need to say yes to every offer, accept every condition, chase every opportunity just because you're afraid of missing out. A buffer gives you the right to say, let me think about it. And that right is extremely rare. Idea 6. Financially stable people. Don't rely on motivation. I've noticed a very clear difference between people who are moving forward and people who always feel stuck. It's not knowledge. It's not income. It's how much they rely on emotions. Most people think, when I feel motivated, I'll save. When I feel confident, I'll invest. When I feel ready, I'll start. But money doesn't work well in an emotional environment. Financially stable people don't need to feel sharp every day to make good decisions. They don't trust motivation. They move money out of the emotional zone as fast as possible. Most people don't realize this. What exhausts them isn't a lack of money. It's having to make money decisions too often. When every month you have to remind yourself to save, debate whether you should set money aside, argue with yourself internally, you burn out. On the other hand, when money moves automatically, gets assigned roles automatically, leaves your spending account automatically, you don't need to be better. You just need to exist inside that system. Here's the interesting part. Sustainable discipline rarely comes from willpower. It comes from reducing how often you have to choose. And when you don't have to keep choosing, you start feeling okay much more often, even if the numbers haven't changed much. Idea 7. Comparison makes stable people feel like they're losing. I've realized something uncomfortable but true. A lot of people are doing well with money but live with the feeling that they're always behind, not because they're lacking, but because they're comparing themselves to the wrong things. They see someone upgrading their car, someone buying a house, someone spending very freely, and they forget something basic. They're only seeing surface results, not the structure underneath. Most people don't realize this. A lot of lives that look great are actually being held up by pressure. Debt pressure, image pressure, the pressure of not being allowed to fail. Meanwhile, real stability is pretty quiet. No flexing, no noise, no need to prove anything. I've noticed the people who compare the least are usually the ones who know their real cost of living, understand where they stand, don't need money to tell a story about who they are. Comparison doesn't just make you feel like you're lacking. It makes you misjudge what you already have. And when you compare the wrong way, you're very likely to break systems that are working, just to chase the feeling of not losing. Idea 8. Keeping your life one level. Below your income is a quiet discipline. I've noticed something most people never name, but it decides almost their entire financial trajectory. It's this: how fast you allow your lifestyle to expand when your income goes up. No one wakes up and says, "Today I'm going to spend beyond my means." It all feels reasonable. Income goes up a bit. You upgrade a bit, life feels better. Spending rises. Everything still feels affordable. Until one day you look back and realize you're earning more than before, but you have less margin. Here's what's interesting. Lifestyle expansion doesn't hurt right away. It just slowly squeezes the future. Financially healthy people rarely live miserably. They just live one level below their income. Not 5 levels. Not forcing deprivation. Just not upgrading everything at once. That small gap creates money to invest, money to make mistakes, money to wait. And most people underestimate the power of that gap. They think they need a big leap. But in reality, just not upgrading too fast already changes everything. Idea 9. Financial health is about having options, not having more stuff. I've realized a lot of people misunderstand what money is for. They think money is meant to buy more, upgrade faster, prove that they've made it. But over time, I've learned this. The most important function of money is creating options. When you have options, you don't have to rush. You don't have to agree right away. You don't have to tolerate things you don't want, just because there's no other choice. Most people don't realize this. People who feel stressed about money are usually people without options. They have to. Take every job, stay in environments that don't fit them. Say yes to bad terms, not because they're weak, but because they have no buffer. On the other hand, financially healthy people can take a day off without panicking, slow down when needed, help someone with a small amount without hurting themselves. Here's what's interesting. These options rarely show up as wealth. They show up as calm, deep sleep. The ability to say, "It's okay, we'll deal with it later." Those things don't show up on social media, but they determine your quality of life. Idea 10. Direction matters more than feelings. I've noticed there's a question many people carry quietly, but rarely say out loud. Am I doing enough? What's interesting is this. That question usually doesn't appear when you're doing something wrong. It shows up when you've started doing things right, because doing the right things with money rarely creates strong emotions. They repeat. They're consistent. They're a little boring. But that boredom is exactly what gives money weight over time. If I had to reduce this entire video to one idea, it would be this. Don't judge your financial health by how it feels. Judge it by direction. If your obligations are slowly shrinking, your safety net is slowly growing, your major decisions are less emotional than before, you're on the right path, even if you don't feel rich. I've noticed most people underestimate slow progress and overestimate short-term emotions. Money doesn't need you to feel excited. It needs you to stay in the game long enough. As long as you don't destroy your system because of emotions, don't make yourself poorer just to prove something. Don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's surface. You're building something very rare, a life with margin. If you saw yourself in what I just shared, hit like on this video. If you want to go deeper into money psychology, financial behavior, and how wealthy people actually think, subscribe to the channel. We don't talk about getting rich fast here. We talk about building wealth that lasts. I'll see you in the next video.